So today on our program, we have the man himself, Jesse Linares. He has worked full-time in the salon for close to 2 decades. What? He's a veteran educator of over 15 years. He's obsessed with the unique challenges and educational needs of the working class hairdresser. And Jesse has taught hundreds of classes from coast to coast in every situation, every venue that you can imagine. His real world, that's the word I'm looking for, real world demeanor, and teaching in a language that's super down to earth, humorous, easy to understand, is really his call. So let's put in the chat box a big, huge welcome to Mr. Jesse Linares. Good morning, Jesse.
What's up, Andrew? What's up, everyone who's with us? I saw Tara out there already. What's up? Good to have you guys with us once again. So we'll be spending the next 45 minutes to an hour discussing, I think they put, what did they put on the ad? Shaggy Bob, right?
Shaggy Bobs.
Give us a pic of that again. Do you have that close by, Andrew, where you could pop that up on the screen for us?
Nope.
Okay, cool. That's cool. I brought one with me, so there, that works out. I got the benchmark today. Thank God. Oh, man. I'm still in a food coma. I've been eating Thanksgiving leftovers since Thanksgiving, so it tends to stack on itself. And it's my favorite meal of the year, so I love it all the time. If I could have retitled this class for us, I would have called it more diagonal concepts in layering. What we're starting to see in trends right now is that everything is definitely moving away from the face. And I love the evolution that we've seen over the past couple of years where that long layers became, the lob, and then it became the shag, and it evolved into the mullet or wolf cut. And now we're starting to see at salon level at my place, a little bit more of a user-friendly version of that. Some people are calling it the bobcat. Some people are calling it the shaggy lob, but what I really want to focus on today is how we could use one form of sectioning to get us to many different end results. And that's what I want to talk about. So please think of this as a classroom. Please throw comments up there that we can see. Please ask relevant questions. And I'll tell you right away, if you were even thinking about it, yes, you can do everything I'm about to do today on curly hair, on thick hair, on every kind of hair. So I went ahead and cut half of this for us today, just so we'd have it all done so we could look at it. And then we're going to cut the other half together and discuss it. This is going to exploit a diagonal back movement. In some cutting languages, they refer to it as a round layer. And so as we get into that today, we're going to talk about why we make those decisions. I really want today to be a why class. Now, I know these classes, when they're on the web, they need to take place quickly. People want to get content and get off right away. But what I'm going to say is this. The ideas that I have to share today are really worth fleshing out. So I'm going to talk about them as I feel appropriate. But just know, if you've got to go, no worries. Come back later. We'll have this stuff stored on YouTube and our Facebook page for you to look at forever to come. Now, what am I doing right now? We're just taking a nice section, a round section, if you like to use those terms. For myself, I'm getting away from that. I find that, in insider terms, I say, terms that belong to hairdressers such as straight graduation, swelling graduation, triangle layering, round layering, square layering, and every other kind of layering you could possibly imagine have found their way to the consumer sector. And now our guests are beginning to come to us and use those terms. This is something that is beautiful, but also needs to be managed with a careful hand, because it happened to me the other day. I had a lady who came in who was obsessed with getting some round layers because this shape that she saw and liked was called round by whoever edited the copy on it. And so even though it wasn't, she was obsessed with that idea. And it took a lot of talking to kind of convince her otherwise. So we're not going to say round. We're not going to say straight or swooping or scooping or what have you. We're just going to talk about what is happening in front of our very eyes and how the hair is going to hit the floor. And truly, when we speak about principle-based stuff just like that, it makes things very easy to understand. So you can see now I've taken this curved line. This is a line that's going to allow me to get to my perimeter quickly. I learned this by watching a guy named Daniel Joseph Muldoon, modern day master, in my opinion. And every time I see him, I learn something great that I can take back and apply behind the chair and share with my friends. So this line diagonal back lives just inside the hairline, enough to give us what's going to be a solid perimeter. Now, the shape is designed to move away from the face. And what we're going to do is we're going to treat the construction of this shape almost as if we were cutting a bob horizontally from the back. But imagine, if you can, that we just turned it around to where it's backwards, and we're going to start in the front and work our way towards the back, cutting for texture if we want to produce that end result. So notice too that the line that we've chosen is important, because we're going to use this line, and you'll see what I'm talking about as we go through the cut, to sort of scribe the finger angles and finger positions that we're going to use to set up the layers as we move through this shape diagonally back. So I want to make sure that that line doesn't tilt so much that it's going to become more of a round little cap on her, but we want that to move just inside the hairline, giving us a nice solid diagonal feeling that follows the round shape of the head. As we come around back, you can see that it starts to level out a little bit and become almost horizontal by the time it meets the center back. We have the other side cut and finished out already. We're just going to bump into it with this side. A little moisture here. Now, that was a lot of talking to get to a simple place, but it needed to be said. So we're putting all the hair into its natural fall, letting it be nice and damp, but as much as possible, not overly exerting the tension on it. Because can you agree that we want the end result on this to be loose at the bottom, you know, not overly rigid, but open, kind of the evolution of that shag a little bit. So we're going to cut through it instead of cutting across it or on the outside of the section. The shear we'll be using for this part and through most of the exercise today is going to be our Artist Series slide cutting shear. Let me bring that in nice and tight for you so I can talk about the blades just a little bit. You'll notice, oops, there was a trick for this. There we go. You'll notice that the blades are not straight as they reach the end of the blade. They tend to, around this point, tend to curve away. So as the shear closes, right around here, it's going to begin to release the hair out through the end of the shear. And so it gives us, when working from the interior going out, a really nice buttery feeling. So we're going to set this line up diagonal back, moving off the face. Set it up like a nice curtain fringe. So here in the front, we're just going to look for that spot where this should begin. Now, if we're using the other side as a guide, that was just around the cheekbone. And so I'm cutting through that. And how are we accomplishing this? You know, some people call this slide cutting. When I think of slide cutting, the shear is normally in motion as it goes through the hair. For this, because I have a definite origin place and a very definite ending place, because I'm setting up my perimeter, that I want to keep this movement controlled and not just be pushing through it. So I'm going to set it up like this. I'll put myself in position where my fingers are safe from the shear. And then how little, as you can see there, or how wide I open the shear, determines the sort of statement I'm going to make, or the origin point of the cut to its ending point on the ends. So I want that to be down here, so a nice short stroke. And that line's moving down and away. We want this to open up the cheekbone and the jaw. That's what most of these shapes are doing for us right now. We don't see anything really crowding the face at the moment. Now, as we come around here to the top of the ear, this is where our length is really going to start to roll out. So we want to make sure that right there in this area that's so critical, we leave enough perimeter that it can still have some density right there. The alternative, if we were to continue to angle this back and away, is that we would definitely throw the emphasis or the eye towards the back of the haircut. So if we want this to handle like a mullet, cool, take that off. If you want it to feel more like a shaggy bob, then we need to create some sense of solidity right there in the front. So we're going to call that our length right there. Now we have this line that moves diagonally this way. Notice that we made a point to keep that parallel to this line. That way, when the layers are set down and they're pushed away from the face by design, they're going to move side by side, or in what I call those even furrows or corrugations or trenches. Think about vertical layering. When we layer hair vertically, we hold out, we cut, it collapses that volume on the side, and we see that that leanness moves down vertically because that was the line that we drew. So when we're working this line diagonally, knowing that it's going to be pushed back and away, then we want these to be even. So right here, we're just going to keep that line moving, cutting through like so. Have fun when you texturize the hair. Let yourself be in a relaxed spot. A lot of times when I do my perimeters, I'll actually sit down in front of it so we can get in there. Let me turn just a little bit more towards you. There we go. And now, how wide I open the shear and a nice slow closing movement bails me out right there at that area of length that we talked about. And this might take repeated motions. Feel free to picket fence it. And what I mean is to have angles that move from both sides, creating little points rather than a line that consistently moves in one direction would be if we went like this. So going.
Jesse,
Yeah.
I may have missed this. You may have actually said this, but can you tell us why you're starting in the front corner instead of in the back? Very often we look at, starting our bobs in the back.
Yeah, absolutely. These days I'm just having a lot of fun mixing it up. I take a lot of classes myself, and I get little bits of inspiration from other field educators that I see. To watch a master in motion really inspires me. So I saw someone the other day who's like, "Hey, you want to shake things up behind the chair? Start that thing in the front and move towards the back. You'll freak out." But there's some good stuff in freaking out because it totally connects us to that moment. And when I'm freaking out on a haircut, nothing else exists. Right? So that can be beautiful if we don't let it get out of hand. Another reason I started in the front, because we needed to set a line that was going to move down and away from the face, mimicking this first parting that we made, that if you'll stick with us, you'll see how it's going to guide how we construct our layers into those next movements. Thanks for that question. I end up getting my back to the computer sometimes, so if I don't see your question, Andrew picks out the ones that need to be asked and sends it to me. Tara says, "Show us how you're holding the shears, Jesse." All right, here we go. I got shoulder issues. That's kind of where a lot of this starts for me. I don't sit around, thinking about ways that I can blow my mind in haircutting. Normally, the needs and the techniques that we use are more responsive to something that's going on. So I'm just getting to a place where I can't pick my shoulder up the same way like I used to. So now I want to hold the shear to where I can exploit that same thing, but not hurt myself in the process, right? So here was a movement that I used to do all the time. I want to cut down and through. So look at my arm and shoulder being hyperextended. I found out after years that really starts to jack your neck up too. So this, gets to where it is really uncomfortable. It can be hard to get in front of it. You're really throwing your body. So the idea here, and our unique grip on the shear is very conducive. It really helps us to do this. Note the double tang right there. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the shear like normal, and then I'm just allowing it to roll over in my hand to where our two tangs come out, very securely on my ring finger. So I've got a nice grip on that, and then I can reinsert my thumb and work the shear this way. So it just allows me to, instead of doing this, it allows me to just roll this over and work this way. Our shears are cool for that. Most of the tools that we've designed are meant to yield some kind of ergonomic benefit. So just continuing to finish my perimeter as I move around, have some fun with it, right? Notice how we've allowed the natural texture of the hair to kind of shine through. That was another hot tip I got from watching Master Daniel Joseph Muldoon the other day, was really allowing, even in wet cutting, that you can allow the personality of the hair to shine out. I don't want to fanboy on that guy too hard, but yeah, he's awesome. Every time I see him, I get something new. All right, so we've got a perimeter cut now. What was important about that too is that we kept a moderate amount of density to it, so we know that our bob will look like a bob and not a little bubble with some little strings hanging out of the bottom of it. You guys ready to do some layers? Here we go. I got the inspiration for this particular cut in my salon world. Someone was bringing me pictures of a Korean actress from the show Squid Game, and she had this little bob that moved away from the face, and kind of hugged up to the head a little bit on the side there. So I started playing with that idea to put that together, and then started having a whole lot of fun with just this concept of sectioning diagonal back, or even more extreme into concentric circles, which we'll talk about a little. You can see that on the diagram behind me. Let me bump the head offline for a second. I'm going to give you the old zoom here. So as I step back here, you can see, that this diagonal back line provides for us the perimeter. And now we're going to begin to work on the inside, just following that parting. Here's a back view for us. It almost looks like, a target on the head. Concentric circles will yield us a little bit more of a bob feeling. And we could also interpret this to where our line stays diagonal back most of the time, which would give us a leaner, more vertical-ish result as we head towards the back of the head. So next section, we're just going to get about a 1/2 inch inside, and we're just going to follow this line down and around. So I'm saying diagonal back in a loose way. What is truly happening is that we're following the contour of the head. And there's a lot of different ways to look at that concept. But in this case, I'm trying to, if the head curves, I'm trying to make the line curve as well. So from the side aspect, it looks like diagonal back. But you can see as we move around to the occipital bone that right around here, the line begins to drift horizontal, because that's what the head is telling us what to do, or that's what the head is telling us to do. Sorry. I'm going to drop her just a little bit so I can raise this up. And let's back this camera off just a little bit. There we go. So we're going to start right here up top, and we're going to keep on using our Artist Series slide cutting shear. I want to see deep texture from this. We're looking at creating length that is not that long. So if the texture is too crispy on the ends, meaning if it is too well defined and not airy enough, then this can really start to look like a bubble. So notice we are going to talk about our elevation 90 degrees to the head form, not to the room. So this can be a little bit different in that when we elevate to the room, if the head is level, we would call this, somewhere between the vertical 90 and the horizontal 90. Whoops, there it is. And so this now, from the point on the head where it lives, is being elevated 90 degrees. And we want this to be consistent, so we're going to make sure that our section size works to about our second knuckle. What that's going to show us is a section that appears to be small and flat, that we don't see a lot of influence of the curve of the head in there. If you're seeing the curve of the head in there, you're going to start to see those little concavities appearing at the end of the silhouette. So that first section, we're going to elevate 90 degrees, and we're going to take a little bit of what was cut previously with us to use as a guide. So 90 degrees coming from its head, from its place on the head, means this. From the front view and from the side, we're going to see something that looks about like that. To keep my language consistent all the way through, when I say elevate to 90, I'm going to say we're elevating to the top parting. Bring her around this way. What's important here too, and something that's becoming more and more revealing in my own work, is the angle at which the shear enters the hair. A lot of times if I'm point cutting here, then my line would look like this, which creates a short to long feeling that way. And when this is released, it could tend to look a little bit steppy over here on this side of the head. So being consistent means that when I'm cutting on, or gonna slide my way through this cut on the outside here, I'm gonna need to be standing on the right side of the head. If the hair I'm cutting is on the left, moving my shear towards the left to create short to long movements as they go away from the face. I'm just gonna drop her a bit so my hand will get in there. There we go. So with a lot of talking, here we go. Looking for my previously cut hair, there it is. And I'm going to slide a little bit past that, giving myself room to work. And then as we discussed, how wide or how narrow I open the shear is going to create the statement. Keeping a nice good grip on this so I capture everybody. And what that gives us is something that can go a little deeper than point cutting. It allows us to penetrate up to an inch and a half inside the subsection, which means it's a lot harder to accomplish that from the outside. Well, I shouldn't say harder, but it is different and requires a little bit different movement. So now I'm putting this section down because I'm finished with it, and we're going to move around the head. Let's look at what 90 degrees is here. I'll take a tiny bit of what we just cut so we can see it. And then I know that I'm going to be looking for a section that, to meet the constraints of my fingers to my second knuckle there, is going to be about an inch and a half, but no more than. So 90 degrees for me is mean elevating to the parting, the top parting. And I'm looking for my previously cut hair, which I can see right there. I'm going to slide past that a little bit, and then I can create my deep texture.
Jesse, would you recommend always cutting this wet for control, or could you also cut this dry?
I like to say that everything is everything anymore. The more I go online and look for yes or no or right or wrong, the more I'm convinced that if you can get it done, go for it. I used to be really dogmatic in the early days, but yeah, these days, hair hits the floor. If you can make that happen in a way that you're happy and the person you're doing it to is happy, then everyone should be happy. For myself, I go through phases. Right now, I'm working a lot on my body position and my so-called, movements of precision. So I'm working a little bit more wet, but that absolutely does not mean that you can't have a precision mindset doing anything. Even that dude out there that used the flaming sword to cut the hair, I would venture to say that while that looked insane, he had to be pretty precise about it. So to that point, what I need to say is there's no rule. Today's new school is no school. It's whatever you want to try and do. If you can pull it off without hurting anybody, man, it's all yours. Put it on social, brand it, help the rest of us understand.
Awesome. And Charla also had the question, each time you're bringing up the hair to 90 degrees, are you over directing to the parting?
Okay, so this to me is just elevation. Now we're getting into kind of an esoteric concept here because, this appears to have over direction in it because even though it's a diagonal section, this does appear to be moving side to side. But, the shape that we're constructing is designed to move in tandem with the head form. So I wouldn't say, somebody could say that there's over direction happening here. But for myself, let me bring this in tight. I'm going to call this elevation. Because I'm bringing it to my top parting. But one thing I'm very careful about is that my fingers and the parting itself remain parallel. And so when this thing falls, it's going to fall down this way, creating that diagonal back line that happens right there. So I wouldn't say that it's over direction, but a lot of different languages call stuff a lot of different things. Someone tell me the difference between layers and graduation. That could be an hour-long discussion unto itself. For myself, I try not to engage so much in those terms anymore because, branded language is, what it does. And so if someone has a rule that you're calling something one thing, and then someone else wants to make it and brand a cutting language about it, well, quite simply, you're not allowed to use those same terms because technically they belong to someone. So, I've seen that now with the proliferation of cutting languages that it can be very confusing to the learner mind when one simple thing is called 15 different things and everyone wants to say that theirs is the best. That's the truth, that cutting is only, the opening and closing of a sharp object on some hair. And how we get there is the amazing part of the journey. Make your education fun. Don't tie yourself to labels. No matter what anybody's calling it, make sure that you observe what's happening right before your eyes. And then talk about that. In my consultations, I have found that it's extremely useful to kind of eschew with all of those terms and just talk about, hey, when I pull this over here and hold my hand like this and do this, hair's going to fall off and it's going to look like this. And that's really helping me cut through some of the smoke screen of language and then get to an end result that everyone can be happy with. All right. Just looking for another like 1.5 inches or a flat section where I don't see a lot of curve in it. See how that one appears to be kind of flat, but watch what happens if I took all of this at once. If I'm pulling all of this now, we can definitely see, where that curve of the head exists. So if I were to pull this out and cut all this in one line, you can see that from the cutting line, that the curve of the head would make the interior of this section somewhat shorter than the exterior pieces. So in the final analysis, it gives you a little bit of a scooped out feeling or concavity appearing that way. So those small changes in direction, some people call that working to the contour of the head, working to the planes of the head, or keeping a true 90-degree elevation. So here, I'm going to change my body position just a little bit. Now this one gets a little bit harder for me because what I'm trying to do here is I want to continue to have my shear moving out. But these movements are giving a little crowded feeling for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exploit that movement that we talked about already, that kind of opening of the shear and rolling it away from me. So I've got my hand parked in a safe spot and I'm making my deep interior cuts. I don't know if I would call it slide cutting, but just deep interior shaping. Coming around the mountain here. Here I am getting close to the nape area. Notice also that the parting has kind of drifted to be kind of horizontalish as we're getting back towards the center. So we're going to allow our hands to change position along with that. I'm going to take a little bit of what was cut underneath it just to use as a guide, a reference for length. So here, I'm going to draw a little bit past. You can see that starting to fall away. And then here comes the shear. Doing a little bit of awkward movement with my wrist, but this is helping my shoulder. You guys doing okay out there? Man, I've been talking a lot so far. We're about halfway through. If you're doing okay, throw some kind of emoticon or emoji or Decepticon out into the feed there. Thanks for being with us.
You're such an old man.
Hey,
Christina's asking.
What were the original ones called? What were the original ones? What were the original ones called? Where you would just like make a colon and a parentheses. There was a name for that. Emoticons. Yeah. Okay. Back in the day.
Someone else can type it in.
Cool. Yeah. Sorry. Let me bring it back to the hair. Eh?
Yeah, Christina's asking, doesn't that angle take the weight of the hair? So I'm thinking she's asking if the angle that you're cutting is taking away weight.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Christina, if you're still out there, can you give us a little bit more? The angle of the hair, being truly 90 degrees as we move our way around, it is going to be conforming to the roundness of the head form. So, if I could demonstrate here on my own nugget, right? I don't have a lot of hair on right now, so I'll be easy to show this to. I'm going to look at my monitor here. So 90, 90, 90, 90, and we're respecting that as we move around the head from the front aspect. But if you look from the side aspect, then you're going to see 90, 90, 90, 90, and so forth and so on, as we move around the head this way. So we're pulling it directly out perpendicular from where it lives. If this was a spot on the head, then the hair would have to come out just like that in every aspect that you can view it from 90 degrees. So, it's hard to show on camera, but we're working around the head like this in kind of a natural projection kind of idea. I think that's what it's called in the old pivot point book. Just kind of like imagine if they stuck their finger in a light socket and everything was shot out directly from the head. That's the idea we're having as we cut it. So does it take the weight of the hair? I would say that yes. We'll see. If that doesn't answer the question in the way that you had designed it, please ask again.
I think it did.
Okay. I want everybody to get what they came for today. It's my last time of the year to be online with everyone. So my last field program of the year. You know, it's such a shame I couldn't have done it in person because remember, Andrew, last class of the year is when I do Jesse's take on pieces of me and I give away everything.
And then you ask for everything back. Yeah.
Now, you know, I'm doing the Lord's work here, man. I'm spreading good vibes, spreading good gear, and you know, can't have a problem with that. They told me I can't just ask for more gear whenever I want. So now when I give something away, yeah, I have to buy it again. And at first I was a little bitchy about it, but then I'm like, you know, that makes the gift even sweeter. All right, here we go now. I'm going to drop her just a little bit. I'm so small. Okay. Here we are, 90 degrees. Let me just hold this in position for a moment so we can see it from all aspects. So I'm not at the exact top of the head, so I'm moving down. So that's going to be 90 degrees there. 90 degrees there. And 90 degrees there. This one took some practice for me because a lot of the salon shapes that I cut, you know, for the last 10 years or so, they have been designed to be really fast and easy shapes to get to. And so now, at long last, you know, the Sassoon people have been predicting it for ages, and now they're right. You know, really controlled movements are finding their way back into hair cutting. So, you know, I am, and you should too, be looking to all different camps of haircutting right now and where they're moving with their new collections and shapes, and then start prepping for that on your mannequins at home, because that's what's going to be coming to us at some point. You know, I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I would say the high fashion trickle down effect for us takes like three years. It goes faster than it used to, but you know, so if we see a trend, you know, hitting hard on social, hitting hard in celebrity circles, then it takes, you know, a few months to a year for it to kind of hit the salonable shape or that circuit. At least for me. Putting my body here on her right side behind. And now here I am at 90 degrees once again. I just want to turn this so we can all see. There we go. And there's this aspect that way. 90 degrees perpendicular, and keep your section size small enough to where you're not seeing the round of the head in your section. Making sure that your fingers are parallel to the partings that you've made, and that we're not necessarily adjusting finger angle for length towards the front or the back, and we're not really over directing any farther. You know, if I was going to just venture a definition, then I would say, you know, if we venture away from this point of 90 degrees, you know, then unwanted elevation or unwanted over direction. It's almost like a combination of the two as far as I can see it. So here we are where I cut previously. I'm going to draw out a little bit past that, and then working the shear. How deep or how shallow do you want? Man, seeing a lot of action on the feed. My old eyes ain't what they used to be, so I'd have to zoom in to read it. But yeah, thank you guys, small enough. Oh, thanks, Katie. I've been quoted.
How would you check the cut?
We check the cut by the same way that we cut it. So this one, because we're moving with the contour of the head, is going to show a lot of corners on it. So if you randomly pick something up and pull it out and look at it, the old tug test, as it were, then, you know, sometimes things will look like they don't jive. You know, I'm hearing now at high levels of haircutting education that, you know, check it, cross-check all day. But whatever you do, don't cross-cut, because when you cross-cut, basically you're cutting in direct contradiction to the shape that you already created. Imagine, this happens quite often. We construct layers vertically, and we cut them vertically, and we blow dry them out to look so perfect vertically. And then we go back at the end, pull out a section horizontally, and we see something we don't like, and we take it off. And so, what is actually happening there is that you are deconstructing our own shapes. We're deconstructing our own shapes. So to check this one, what I like to do is as I'm moving around the head, normally in the salon, if I did this on a live person, we're going to cut this one side and then the other. So we would cut the perimeter on the whole thing and then cut the layers on each side as we go. So that allows us to take these little tug tests. So even though we're working in this round shape, we know that there's these dependable points of reference that exist on the head, such as the so-called parietal ridge or vertical transition, such as the occipital bone and that apex that moves from the occipital bone all the way around the head. The temporal region, we got all of these places where we can check. So then if I took a piece from parietal area on both sides and then pull it out, they should come to be about the same length. If I pull a piece out at the corner back, then I should be able to find that same place on the other side and get myself a check. So points of reference exist always. So no matter what kind of shape that you've done, you can use those areas to dependably check on yourself as you go. If you find, I would say on cuts like this too, kind of check each section a little bit before you move on to the next one, because just like when you cut bobs that start in the back, if you make a boo-boo and if you don't catch it early, then it continues to be exacerbated as you move towards the end of the cut. So look for those ideas as you're moving forward. Getting a little bit dry here. Okay, this will be our final section here in this row. We've got just a little bit of where we cut previously, elevating 90 degrees, or as I'm saying, to this top parting, and I'm looking for which pieces of hair contact most closely to the new hair. Notice that some length is falling away. That's just hair that I maybe didn't need to pick up, and it's not even there. So there's the hair that's previously cut. And once again, I'm going to roll my shear over in my hand and then allow myself to work this way. And I'm starting to get a little feel for that shape as we work through. Now, there was another way we talked about that you could get after this. We decided to go concentric circles, let those partings follow the round of the head all the way around. What that's going to do for us in the back here, let me put the shear down for a sec. On the side that we finished out, you can see that it gives us a little bit of a bump right in there. And you can see, I'm going to fuss this finish up a little bit. That we can see how those lines, oops, there we go, move backwards and around the head, kind of following that head shape, and they're replicating that bit of occipital region, and then we get a little bit of dump out of the length. If that is too abrupt, styling takes care of it to a large degree, but if they decided that, when they style it at home, it doesn't really work out the same way, you could, instead of following the round of the head, begin to violate that and allow your line just to travel diagonal back all the way. What would result from that is that it's going to give us, as we move around the corner, lines that appear to look more vertical. And so they will fall a lot leaner back there. You could imagine working concentric circles gives us more of a bobby feel, because it's definitely going to contour to the head shape, even as we get to the back, following those lines and forcing them to be diagonal back all the way to the back eventually creates leaner, more shaggy type layers that really open up under the occipital region. Just different ways to attack this. I want to finish these last couple of sections for you, taking another parting that just follows that shape. And it's starting to really feel a little bit like a bullseye now. Because as I drop this out, you can really see that that shape is getting quite round. Really going to end up in the crown there with a perfect little circle. Can you razor cut this? Absolutely. And I would say, Somebody out there, let's start doing more razor cutting. I'm thinking about it myself. We just haven't really seen it dominating a trend in a very long time. And I feel like the pause is pregnant with that. You know, it's ready to release the razor into the public once again. I'd love to see everyone in the salon busting those razors out and doing whole haircuts with them. So you could definitely work it with a razor too. In fact, body position and entry angle of the razor, like we've been doing with this year, is a lot of fun. It's a whole lot of fun. So here we go, previously cut hair. Here's where we are now, 90 degrees. We're going to draw past that, and then how wide or how narrow the shear opens controls what we get. But notice that I keep it relatively parked in a safe place from the meat. I don't like to bleed. Seems how it happens a lot, though. All right. Another small section, working my way around the head. You know, it could go on for 3 or 4 hours about all the options that this kind of approach to haircutting gives us, especially when working with longer hair. Really nice flowing, shaggy layers. You know, I'm cutting this one a little bit longer than the benchmark side, just so we could play with that concept a little bit. And we have some fun razors that you guys could try out. Our signature razor is, it's got a neat chromium handle on it. They found a way to put our double tangs on there too, so you get all these really fun ways to hold it. It's a sharp one. Will remind you a little bit of other safety razors that she's used, but it definitely has that Sammy feeling to it. All right, last section right here. You know, bumping up against the other side of the head now. Not much to cut. Coming in from the top. And just letting that personality of the hair shine through. We're getting a nice bit of shaggy shape to it. You know, what's fun about these two is just more or less a round shag, but, you know, go in at jaw length and just disappear all of that at the end to give yourself a fun, blunted, shaggy little bob. You know, diagonal layering or, you know, movements that go diagonal back are what allowed us to get here. You know, so if I had any advice, I would say get away from the labels. You know, someone calls it a shaggy lob. Someone calls it a who knows what. You know, the names seem to change really quickly these days, but the approach can be something that is consistent. My last little circle here, I'm just going to split into 2 little halves, a top half and a bottom half. And I'm going to work this 90 degrees. There's where I previously cut. I'm going to back my hand away, keep my meat safe, and then holding with a nice firm tension, working through the interior, and now some little shallow strokes just to clean the ends. All right, last one. Elevating 90 degrees. Just because it sits a little on the crown, its 90-degree position is slightly lower. Very deep point cuts. Oh, there's a rando. All right. Now at the end, you've got yourself a little round shag. Go in and make your perimeter disappear if you'd like to see a little bit more bluntness to it. What's a lot of fun with shapes like this, talk to your guests about hybrid ideas. You know, how we can have a deeply textured interior, but then you might go in and take the perimeter off in a very clean way. So we'll get a silhouette on her. You know, kind of see how these layers want to fuss out. And maybe she's like, oh, I love it, but I wish it was just a little shorter. So go in there and with nice deep point cuts. Using our regular Artist Series shear right now. One of my favorites. This was designed by Mr. Andrew Carruthers. And took me a couple years to fall in love with it, but I did finally. An amazing tool. It just handles a little differently. It has a different metal than the rest of our signature metal, and it has I call it road feel. You know, they added the element of carbon to it, which gives it a real rigid feeling when you're working through the hair. It allows the blade to be extremely lightweight, but carbon makes the blade extremely light, low profile, but it'll plow through just about anything. This is our top shelf metal. Really awesome. Really great for making those nice clean lines across the bottom. If I wanted to give her, say, a little bit of crispy perimeter to juxtapose against that deep texture. Really a fun shape. Pretty much any fringe that you'd like to design is going to fit to it. But what I will say is this. If you're going to be working shapes like this on your guest, make sure that you include a little bit on the styling. And what I would say these days, my journey is about keeping it very simple. I like to sell product in the salon. You know, raise your hand out there if you work in the salon, and then, yeah, you need to sell retail to go along with it to complete the look. And I'm playing with a lot of concepts now about keeping the finishing super simple. Make it look easy, keep it to 1 or 2 tools, because if it looks easy to her, she most likely would be willing to try it, would be willing to try the products. So I'm going to take my dryer here, little piece of Sanvia history here. This is the old prototype for the Artist Series dryer. You wouldn't believe the motor that's in this thing, but it looks so innocent. And no, you can't have it, it's mine. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our brushes here. Make this real easy for your guest. And we're going to just polish the ends, but leave the roots alone. And the idea here is, you know, don't go after our extremely structured blow dry idea. When I first started, I was like a little technical brain, and I just couldn't be any other way. You know, so every single shape that I worked, you know, I had to finish it out, you know, ad nauseum, like 5 different brushes, had to use all these different products. And what would happen, as it turns out, I was overwhelming people. And they kind of check out when they think, oh my God, I'm never going to get this. They're gone, back to the phone. So, you know, Sam inspired me a couple of years ago by saying, you know, when your guest is on that phone and they ask you questions about finishing, make them break that little baby out and videotape your blowout while you give them a little bit of tutorial. I'm just going to blow a little bit on the ends here just to give them some polish. I'm not necessarily trying to direct them in any certain way. Just enough to knock the water off and to put a little bit of polish on it. Now from there, it's really just about getting handsy with it and then showing them how to do that as well. I see a lot of people shaping hair along with the dryer and using their fingers. Guess what? These little babies get hot too. And you can use them to kind of massage and smooth out hair and even put it into loose, natural looking shapes. Make it look easy. Just kind of blowing a little bend into it. I like that curve at the top, but I wanted to go backwards now. I'm just kind of massaging that back. Now, does it hurt the hand a little bit? Yeah, but you get used to it. And what you can do is create these soft little movements on the ends. I'm just shaping it with my hand in the air. Yeah, what's happening is here is I'm just getting some nice, soft little undulations that happen like that. You know, it's not necessarily about how much heat you put on the hair necessarily. It's just the hair has to get hot. You know, so moving it around in your hand will make it plenty hot enough to be shaped. The point is how it cools down as well. That's one of the kind of forgotten studies in finishing now, is that we don't give time for the cool. If you have a curl that you're setting and you know you want it to look a certain way, you know, blow the heat into it and then switch to cold. And that's what actually sets the hair. You know, make these things look easy to your guests. You'll become a lot more curious about, good, can I get that product? Tara's asking, perfect, just use it on medium heat because that sucker gets hot. Am I right? Yeah, it gets hot. But so for these kind of techniques, one thing I love about our Artist Series dryer is that it comes with different nozzles. So, this nozzle has a pretty wide opening that we call maximum airflow. It's pretty amazing that just by constricting or allowing airflow out of the dryer, you can slow down airspeed, but also change the temperature. So our focused heat nozzle, which I'm not using for this, is like a laser beam. That's not the one. So I put it on full heat, low air, big nozzle. And what it does is it gives me just enough pressure and air to shape the hair, but it's not going to rotisserie my little fingies. Oh, man. Okay. But, go easy on your finishing. Make it look easy. Shape your ends, put the polish on, and then tell her at home, yeah, this is it. Now you just turn your head upside down and blow it like crazy, right? And so this is the pro version of that. That we aren't allowing the ends to blow nuts necessarily, but we're getting in there at that root area. Then we can come back. The shape that we put on there is still going to be there, but it's going to give us just that little bit of inflate. Don't feel bad if it's a little bit frothy at the top. What we're seeing a lot more of now is that if the finish is overly perfected, it seems not to sell the authenticity to that. So, your favorite blow dry lotion for protection and moisture, something that has like a little bit of silicone to it. I love to put light bits of pomade in the hair and then begin to work those ends with that because you get a little bit of control and shine on them. What I used today to prep it up was, I lost where I put it, but it was a little bit of Redken's from their extreme range. It's their thermal protectant that protects up to 450. Of course, I forget the name right now. I'm an idiot. Sorry about that, Redken. But we love your stuff. And so, just put that in as a protectant and then begin to work that around. Final finishing product could be a little bit of high control paste mixed in with a little bit of hair powder to give it some grip and tack, and then just finish that out for effect. Make sure that you inflate it towards the end, and then it's nice and loose. Don't over finish it. Well, I hope you guys had a good time today. Andrew, were there any last minute questions? Oh, there was one thing I did want to show.
Yes, please.
The point home that, just talking about those round sections like we talked about here, think pixie. Here is the exact same thing. We just took it about 3 inches shorter everywhere. And notice that nice contouring to the head. You can definitely see that diagonal back influence happening. Not even a lot of tailoring on this one. Just cut everything to the 90, cut it about this short, and then at the end I went back in and just opened up the ear a little bit. But think now, diagonal back placement yields a nice pixie, yields that nice mid-length bob, that lovely little surfer cut that a lot of the youngsters are wearing now, just that moppy sort of stuff that has that flip up in the front, looks good when they put the hat on, curls hang out, perfect for that as well. So one sectioning plan that can encompass a whole lot of ideas. What's up, buddy?
Awesome stuff, man. And so, as always, it's a it's a good fresh take on things that we tend to do in the salon. And one of the things that I really liked that you brought up too is that sometimes it's just good to do something because it challenges us and it makes us think differently.
Yeah. Well, I work with our junior stylists all the time, and each one has a special place in my heart, but one thing we always work on is the fleeing from fear, that the only way to get through it, is to stand before it and face it, even if it means we fail. There's the old saying, fall 7 times, but rise 8 and get back to it. And so, the successes, and any master that I've ever seen would agree, is that, a master continues to fail all the time, but it's not viewed as a failure, but as a learning experience. So anytime something's happening in the salon that's freaking you out a little bit, take it as a positive thing and connect to what you're doing and get a win.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, my friend. We appreciate you so much. Great education today, and I'm sure we'll see you back soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a happy Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, whatever it is you celebrate. Make it good, and we'll see you in 2022.